everyone. This is, of course, it's me. It's Taylor, obviously. But last vlog, yay! Last vlog of the semester, yay! Cry, yay! Cry. It's a bittersweet type thing if you didn't catch on to that. But just here to talk about and answer some of Rita's questions that she had, which were awesome questions. Good job, roommate. Love the penguins. Um, but yeah, reading this time around was it was not as it was more I could definitely relate to it more than a lot of the other readings, which were just interesting to read, but couldn't really connect it with anything. So I just felt like I was reading information that was interesting, but not necessarily anything that I experienced in my daily life. But this one was definitely something that I can relate to, and I saw, even my little brother, some of like, the transitioning things, especially with the four S's and how he kind of copes with certain situations and stuff like that. So I could definitely see it in even younger, teens and as well as students that I see on campus every single day. So just to get into the questions that Rita proposed to us Group 2 members. Her first question is, how would a student transitioning into a new period in their life affect their journey towards self-authorship? And there was a kind of like an either or part to that question, so I'm just going to answer kind of like the first part of the question. And I think that I took timing from the situation portion of the four S's, and I think that that's really important, especially and during a transition period, that if it's a good time in their life, say a lot of students, I would say a new period in their life would be, first year students coming to college. It's definitely a new period where they have to transition to their environment, transition to the way information is going to be administered to them depending on what university they go to, where they live, their friends, people that they go to for support, all of that good stuff. So I think that timing has a lot to do with that, and whether they are, even with sophomores or transfer students, I think that timing has a lot to do with that. Let's see, especially when if it's a good time in their life or if it's a bad time in their life, and if a student feels that like timing is good or bad, they can either move on from that situation, or they dwell on the situation, or it may cause growth towards creating their own ideas and their own perceptions of the world and how they view things and stuff like that. Because I only say this because everyone knows the cliche timing is everything, and if a student is faced with adversity, then they may or not want to proceed. If they're faced with a certain situation, they may or may not proceed into self-authorship. They may actually fall back on their support system, which is another thing that's within the four S's. They may fall back on their support system, and that support system may, completely, take care of all their problems, or, feed them ideas, or they allow themselves to be not necessarily controlled, but influenced by those ideas instead of coming up with their own ideas or decisions about the situation. Or there could be kind of just going into another portion that I think is very important when transitioning into a new period is the support. If it's kind of like a lack of support, then they may make a really, really poor decision based off of what the situation is and based off of also the timing. So I think those two things go hand in hand, that if the timing is bad and they need support and they don't have it, then they might make a really bad decision, or they might make decisions based off of what other people would do instead of kind of coming into their own and making their kind of assessing the situation and seeing what they could possibly do about it. Or on the flip side, if they're coming into a situation during the timing is good and everything is great, and they have this great support system, that could also kind of hinder, I would say that could also push, towards self-authorship. And I automatically think of like maybe going to grad school, as you wanted to go to grad school and you got accepted, and then you kind of have to figure out, what you're going to do and all these things, and that, maybe your parents might be a support system, but they might not be as much of a support system. So that can kind of push you towards, self-authorship, kind of like going to look for the resources to see what you need to do in order to pay your tuition, to sign up for classes, talk to your advisor, and depending on how your teachers or your professors are in that program and what program that you're taking, I think that could also push towards self-authorship. So I think those two things are very kind of go hand in hand, and they almost sync when it comes to how a student transitioning into a new period and would affect their journey towards self-authorship. Of course, you can throw so many what ifs, or this person's going through this and this person's going through that into the equation, but I think that those two things are really important. I think that those would be very those could really affect someone's journey towards self-authorship at any stage in their life, not necessarily a first year versus a grad student, but at any point in time, sophomore, transfer, junior, maybe switching into a new building, or into a new maybe into a new program where they don't know a lot of people. So I think that those things are very significant to the journey towards self-authorship. The second question that Rita had was, how would a student with a diverse or limited background affect their path towards self-authorship? I think that I got that question right. I think the one thing that I automatically thought about before even reading up or rereading on this is the sheltered kids versus non-sheltered kids. And I actually saw in the book that Evans mentioned that kids who are had to, I guess you could say, grow up quickly, or the non-sheltered kids usually come in with a very high sense of self-authorship, but then once they get in the classroom, they have this cognitive dissonance because they're not so sure. They don't do well in the classroom because they have this sense of not necessarily who they are, but they know how to make decisions based off of maybe their background. Maybe they had to grow up kind of quickly based off of the situations they were faced with. And then when they get to the classroom, they're supposed to be disciplined. They're supposed to turn in their papers on time, or they're supposed to do these certain things that kind of counteracts with what they believe that what they've learned, or what they believe that they should be doing, or what they shouldn't be doing. So that dissonance, I think, is very crucial or how wide that cognitive dissonance and how they're going to be able to handle that situation, I think, is very crucial to their self-authorship and also their success in college. Whereas even on the flip side, the sheltered kids who are supposedly stereotypically come I guess me personally, I could be considered sheltered, come from middle class background, not necessarily low SES, and they're taught that authority is always rules all, and stuff like that. And so then when they get to college, when they get to a certain point in their life that's very new, they I guess feel that the self-authorship or their path towards self-authorship is not necessarily within the classroom, but out in society, out in the world. And I think that that can definitely be a struggle for some students that are considered sheltered, or they don't have as much self-authorship when it comes to world issues, or social interactions with other students, or being involved in organizations that have a strict rule of conduct. So I see how both of those, I kind of thought of it in that sense, how those two sides could definitely be different when dealing with self-authorship and their path towards self-authorship, especially when you're talking about someone who's from a sheltered background, or someone who's from a non-sheltered background, or someone who kind of got that common sense knocked into them real quickly, versus someone who is a little bit naive. And that's kind of how I thought about it. And then the last question was, when did you realize you were on a path to self-authorship? This is a really fun question, because it's kind of like, when did you realize that you kind of had to grow up and make decisions for yourself, and that you can't take everybody's point as completely and totally valid, which is from another theory. Can't tell you what it is right now, but I know it's from another theory. that so when did I realize that I was on the path to self-authorship? Probably when I got to grad school. No. My last year in college when I got to grad school, because I really just had to kind of grow up. Like I feel like when you're because I grew up, with a college background, at least when I was going to college, a college campus never, scared me, or being in college never scared me. And I'm also a very independent person. Like I don't really mind doing things on my own or learning how to do things on my own. But that was only I was only shown that a very small, I guess, clip of that when I was in college, because I was still living on campus. I still had a meal plan. I could still walk to go get something. I didn't have to buy groceries. Maybe groceries, I paid for groceries that were like $60 every 3 months or something like that, because I wanted snacks in my apartment so I didn't have to walk outside, stuff like that. Whereas now in grad school, I have to pay my bills. I have to budget my money. I have to put gas in my car. I have to do all of these things. I have to write checks that get back in time to pay my credit card for my what is it called, my credit union back in Virginia, so that they don't charge me and overcharge me, and then my credit score goes up, like all these things. So I definitely found myself kind of coming into my own with that, kind of making my own decisions instead of letting my mom and dad tell me what I should be doing with my money or with my time or anything like that. So I think that's, as maybe last year, the beginning of last semester, me being alone and figuring out what I'm going to do in certain situations, who am I going to call, what resources am I going to use, and not necessarily always going to my parents as that first, 911 emergency, like, oh my God, like my car broke down, or, I can't necessarily react to everything emotionally. I kind of have to look at it, in a very logical way in order to solve the problem. So I think that's definitely when I kind of, looking back on it in hindsight, I realized that I'm definitely on a path to self-authorship, and I was thrown into it very quickly. I think I handled it pretty well, had a little bumps in the road, as everybody probably does, but yeah, that was, good, just now I had a good reflection time. So, but yeah, that's my last and final vlog. I'm so excited. It was a great class, student development theory. There's so many theories and so little brain space. And yeah, I wish I could just memorize every single thing and apply them to every single student. But as Rita said, and as it said in the Evans text, that, can't apply one theory to every single student. You have to be able to take multiple, because people have multiple experiences and all that hoopla and all that good stuff that all of us as young student affairs professionals talk about. So I hope that after viewing this, you have a great night, whatever you're doing, probably Oregon Gov, if you're a procrastinator like me. But yep, it's been a great little combo I feel like I've had with myself, and I hope that you all enjoyed the video, and have a good night.